The morning was too quiet for a Thursday. In the northern plains of Burkina Faso, where red dust clung to every surface and silence felt heavier than sound, President Ibrahim Traoré stepped out of an unmarked land cruiser without fanfare. No guards. No advisors. Just him, in a loose shirt the color of dried sorghum, sandals too simple for a president, and eyes that had seen too much for one lifetime. He had heard whispers, not from his cabinet, but from a young radio technician. Rural children being turned away from a clinic. Too full, too tired, too underfunded. It wasn't the first time. But this one had stayed with him. The technician had said it like a confession. They said the boy fainted waiting. He still smiled as he woke up. So here he was, in a sun-baked village clinic with cracked walls and a line of mothers sitting in silence under a neem tree, waiting for hope to open its doors. No one recognized him, not yet. That was the point. He crossed the courtyard slowly, dust rising with each step. He wasn't looking for officials or meetings. He was looking for something else. Something quieter. Something true. That's when he saw him. A boy, no older than 8, barefoot, holding a battered broom twice his size. He swept the dry earth as if it mattered, as if the dust wouldn't return in minutes. His hands were small, blistered. His shirt was too large, hanging off one shoulder. And yet, he swept with care, eyes focused, lips slightly pursed in concentration. Ibrahim slowed. The boy glanced up and gave a polite nod. No fear. Just calm. He stepped back, resting the broom like a soldier at ease. Bonjour, the president said softly. Bonjour, monsieur. What's your name? He asked, crouching slightly so their eyes met. The boy didn't hesitate. Ibrahim. The name stopped him cold. The courtyard didn't move. The air didn't move. Only a bird called somewhere in the distance, sharp and sudden, as if marking the moment. Your name is Ibrahim, the president echoed. The boy nodded. Ibrahim Traoré, he said again, as if repeating a fact he had always carried. For a breathless second, the world narrowed. Not to politics, not to borders, not to power, but to a boy and a name spoken without hesitation. Do you know what that name means? The president asked, still crouched, voice barely above a whisper. The boy looked up, eyes the color of mahogany touched by sunlight. It was my father's name, he said. And my grandmother said it belonged to someone important once. A knot formed in the president's chest. Not pain. Not pride. Something stranger. As if fate had called his name aloud and handed it back to him through the mouth of a child. What happened to your father? The boy didn't answer immediately. He looked down, then swept a small arc in the dust with his bare toe. He's gone, he said finally. Before I was born. And your mother? Gone too. The words were not dramatic. They were dry, like sand that had been rained on long ago but no longer remembered the feeling. I live with Mamie now, the boy added. She's sick, but she says I have strong bones and can work. So I sweep, and sometimes I carry water for the nurse. The president stood slowly. Not because he was done. But because he was shaking. He looked toward the clinic door. A nurse in a faded uniform walked past without seeing him. A goat bleated in the distance. The village moved on, unaware that something sacred had just happened. He turned back to the boy. Do you go to school? Not anymore, the boy said, looking away. Mamie says medicine first. Then school. Maybe. The president nodded, though something inside him recoiled. The words were too familiar. He had once said them himself, in a different time, a different uniform. That same trade, hope for survival. What do you dream of? He asked. The boy hesitated, then gave a shy smile. A bicycle, he said. So I can go faster. And maybe, shoes. I dream about shoes sometimes. The president chuckled softly. Not at the dream, but at how small things could still hold the universe. He reached into his pocket. Not for money. For a small notebook he carried, the kind used to capture thoughts before they slipped away. He scribbled something quickly, tore out the page, folded it, and tucked it inside the boy's shirt pocket. "What's this?" the boy asked. "A reminder," Ibrahim said. "To keep dreaming. Even when no one's watching." The boy nodded slowly. "Merci, monsieur." But Ibrahim didn't walk away. Not yet. He looked down once more, his eyes tracing the boy's outline, the bare feet, the broom, the name. It wasn't just coincidence. It wasn't politics. It was something else. A ripple in time. A name passed forward. A debt unpaid. He turned toward the clinic door, his hand already clenched around a truth he couldn't yet name. Behind him, the boy returned to sweeping. The dust rose again, as it always did. But this time, it seemed to shimmer, not with heat, but with the faint possibility of being seen. The clinic smelled of heat and rubbing alcohol. Not antiseptic clean, just survival clean. As President Ibrahim Traoré stepped through the doorway, the air shifted from scorched dryness to stale stillness. The nurse at the desk looked up without recognition, offered a tired nod, and returned to sorting boxes of gauze that were already half empty. He walked slowly, not with the gait of a man used to command, but with the gravity of someone searching for something he had lost and not yet named. A younger nurse passed with a clipboard. Ibrahim caught her sleeve gently. "Excuse me." The boy outside, the one sweeping, "Do you know him?" She blinked, caught off guard by his calm authority. "Ibrahim?" "Yes. He helps sometimes. His grandmother's inside. She's been sick on and off for a year. Lungs. We think it's fibrosis, but we can't confirm. No equipment." "Her name?" he asked, his voice steady but low. "Fatimata," she said. "Fatimata Traoré." Time didn't stop. But something inside him did. The name hit like a stone dropped into a still pool. Ripples surged through memory, years blurred by ambition, by war, by politics. Fatimata. The cousin he had played hide-and-seek with under mango trees before uniforms and speeches filled their days. The cousin whose laughter he hadn't heard since his own wedding. He swallowed hard. "Can I see her?" The nurse hesitated. "She's asleep, I think. But, you can sit with her." He nodded. No need to explain who he was. Not yet. She led him past two beds crammed into one room. A cracked window let in more dust than light. At the end of the row, beneath a limp ceiling fan that no longer spun, lay a woman shrunken by time and sickness. Her hair was wrapped in a pale blue cloth. Her hands, once strong, now rested loosely on her chest. A thin blanket covered her legs, though it did little against the heat. She slept with her mouth slightly open, breathing in tiny, irregular sips. Yet even in illness, there was dignity, a quiet resilience that refused to leave her face. Ibrahim sat at the edge of a nearby stool. He didn't speak. Not right away. Instead, he watched the rise and fall of her chest. Listened to the quiet struggle in every breath. And slowly, his thoughts traveled backward. To a younger Fatimata, chasing chickens through their grandfather's courtyard. To whispered jokes and shared mangoes, to the rainy season when her brother drowned in a flood and she didn't speak for 3 days. He had promised her then, beneath a tree heavy with rain, "You won't be alone. Ever." And then life happened. Military training. Political unrest. Exile. Leadership. Headlines. Somewhere along the way, he had let go of the family branch, the one closest to the ground. She stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, clouded with sleep and memory. She looked at him for a long moment, confusion forming slowly like fog rolling over a dry hill. Then, as if pulled from a memory stored deep inside her chest, she whispered, "Ibra?" His throat tightened. "Yes, Fatimata. It's me." Her eyes welled with tears instantly. Not because of surprise. Not because of politics. But because, somehow, she had not expected him. Not here. Not after so long. You came, she breathed. I should have come sooner. She reached for his hand, weak but warm. I thought, maybe you forgot us. I didn't, he whispered. I just forgot how to look back. She smiled faintly. He looks like his father, doesn't he? Ibrahim's heart cracked further. Yes, he said. Tell me about him. Fatimata stared at the ceiling as if replaying years in fast motion. His name was Ibrahim too. I named him after you, you know. When you became commander, it made me proud. I wanted my son to carry that name. He had your stubborn jaw. Your fire. What happened to him? Her eyes dimmed. The mines. They said it was an accident. Tunnel collapsed. But we both know what kind of work they force boys into when no one's watching. He was just 20. Ibrahim closed his eyes. The boy outside. His nephew's child. Named for him. Carrying bottles of water. Sweeping courtyards. Living in a shadow of a name that had once meant hope. And the mother, he asked. Gone with childbirth. She bled too long. We couldn't get her to a hospital in time. Silence settled again. Not heavy, sacred. Ibrahim reached into his pocket and unfolded the paper he had given the boy earlier. He had written just 2 words, keep becoming. Now he stared at them again. They meant more than he realized when he wrote them. Fatimata squeezed his hand. He doesn't know who you are. I never told him. I didn't want him to wait for something that might never come. Ibrahim nodded slowly. He deserves more than my name. No, she said firmly, surprising him. He deserves because of it. But not just yours. His father's too. They sat there, surrounded by dust and whispers and a past that had waited too long to speak. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering dry leaves across the courtyard. The boy kept sweeping, unaware that inside, something had returned to life. A memory. A name. A promise once made under a mango tree. And for the first time in many years, Ibrahim Traoré no longer felt like a president. He felt like a man with something to fix. The road to the burial ground was narrow, cracked, and lined with silence. Ibrahim Traoré didn't take the convoy. He took a rusted motorbike borrowed from a local nurse, riding it himself down the dusty trail behind the health clinic. The air clung to him in a film of heat, and the helmetless wind combed through his hair like it was trying to remember who he was before titles and salutes. He had asked Fatimata where her son had been buried. She didn't speak. She simply pointed east. Now he stood before a crooked wooden stake, half sunk into the soil, bearing a name scorched into a piece of scrap metal. Ibrahim Traoré. Born 2003, died 2023. Father. Son. Fire. The words hit harder than any headline ever had. This grave, shallow and forgotten, held the body of a man whose name echoed his own, not by coincidence, but by choice. A nephew. A namesake. A boy who had grown up watching Ibrahim rise on television, hearing his name shouted through radios and rallies, while mining dust blackened his own lungs. He had died beneath the earth, nameless to the nation. And yet, not nameless to blood. Ibrahim knelt slowly, knees pressing into the warm soil. There were no photographers. No podium. No one to record this moment. Only a bird crying in a far tree and the buzz of cicadas thick in the still air. He placed his palm on the grave. I'm sorry, he whispered. For not knowing. For not seeing. For not asking. The silence that followed felt like forgiveness. He sat there for a long time, knees folded, letting the wind tell its story. And when he finally stood, brushing the dirt from his trousers, he looked out at the horizon and realized what must come next. This boy, his great-nephew, his namesake's son, could not be another unseen grave in the making. Later that afternoon, Ibrahim walked back into the courtyard. The boy was no longer sweeping. He sat under the neem tree with a cracked plastic cup of millet porridge in his lap, legs folded neatly, eyes watching a pair of goats chase each other near the fence. He looked peaceful, unaware of legacies and bloodlines. Just a boy, hungry, trying not to spill his lunch. "Mind if I join you?" the president asked, lowering himself beside him. The boy blinked, then smiled. "You can have the rest of my porridge if you're hungry." Ibrahim chuckled. "No, thank you. But I want to ask you something." The boy nodded. "Do you know what it means to carry someone's name?" The boy tilted his head. "Mamie said it means remembering. So no one forgets who came before." Ibrahim exhaled. "She's right. But it also means becoming more than what they were allowed to be." The boy squinted. "I don't understand." "You will," Ibrahim said softly. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out an old military ID, frayed, faded, the edges softened by time. It was the first one he ever carried, years ago, before he was a leader, back when he was just a soldier with a mission and a name stitched into the corner of his chest. He handed it to the boy. The child turned it over, reading carefully. His eyes widened. "This is, you?" "It was. Once," Ibrahim nodded. "Before all this." The boy looked at him for a long time, then back at the card. "You're the president," he said finally. Ibrahim nodded again. The boy blinked, stunned. "Why are you here?" "Because you're here," the man said. The boy didn't know what to say. He looked down at the card again, then at his own hands. "I thought you were far away." "I was," Ibrahim said. "Too far for too long." A long silence passed. Finally, the boy spoke, his voice small. "Does this mean I'm supposed to be something too?" Ibrahim turned to him, eyes soft but steady. "You already are. The question is, what do you want to become?" The boy swallowed. His voice barely carried. "A teacher. Like the one we used to have. Before she got sick." Ibrahim nodded. "Then that's what we build toward. One step at a time." "But what about Mamie?" the boy asked suddenly. "If I go to school, who will take care of her?" Ibrahim looked him in the eyes. "We take care of both of you. That's what family is for." The boy's lips parted, then closed again. He didn't cry. Not yet. But something in his shoulders relaxed, like a burden had slipped off without him realizing how heavy it had been. They sat together under that tree for a long while. No ceremony. No declarations. Just two people who shared a name, now sharing a quiet vow. As the sun began to dip, casting golden rays through the dry branches, the boy looked up and asked one last question. "Can I still keep sweeping sometimes?" "Why?" Ibrahim asked with a smile. "Because it helps me think," the boy shrugged. "And the dust comes back anyway." The president laughed, the sound soft and genuine. "Then yes. You can sweep whenever you want. But only after you've done your homework." The boy grinned. And in that smile, Ibrahim saw the twist of fate that had brought them together, not as a burden, but as a gift. He had found a boy with his name. Now, it was time to give him back a future. The next morning, a file appeared on the president's desk in Ouagadougou. It bore no seal, no ribbon, no stamp of urgency, just a handwritten title in block letters. "My name, my future." Inside were notes from a midnight meeting, sketches on napkins, and a single sentence circled in red ink. "The child who bears your name might be the one who carries your legacy, if you remember to notice him." Ibrahim Traoré closed the folder and stared out the palace window. Across the city, buses roared past street vendors, boys shouted over footballs made of plastic bags, and young girls in school uniforms balanced books atop their heads. The nation pulsed forward, loud, alive, and, too often, unaware of the children who slipped between its cracks. But that would change. He didn't call a press conference. He didn't make a speech. Instead, He picked up the phone and called Marie, the same advisor who once wept quietly when he spoke of his grandson Issa. Now, she listened carefully as he outlined the idea. "It's not a program," he told her. "It's a promise." Within 48 hours, the wheels began turning. In a modest neighborhood not far from the palace, young Ibrahim woke in a room that no longer smelled of illness. Fatimata was recovering. A nurse visited each day. They had been moved to transitional housing arranged through a quiet partnership between the health ministry and a local charity. No fanfare. No cameras. Just dignity, delivered in silence. And across the room, on a simple wooden desk, lay something the boy had never owned before, a backpack. Still new. Still stiff. Inside were 4 exercise books, 3 pencils, and a single hand-drawn map of the world, colored by a government clerk who once dreamed of being a teacher herself. Each morning, the boy rose before sunrise and watered the small aloe plant on the windowsill. It was a ritual, a habit he started the day Fatimata smiled again. On his first day of school, he stood outside in a crisp uniform, unsure of what to do with his hands. Ibrahim Traoré appeared quietly beside him. No security detail. No convoy. Just a man walking alongside a boy who shared his name. "You ready?" he asked. The boy nodded nervously. "I've never sat at a desk before." "That's okay," Ibrahim said. "Desks are just chairs with purpose." The boy chuckled. "Do I have to speak in front of the class?" "Only if you want to," the man replied. "But I think they'll want to hear you." They walked together to the small school on the edge of the city. It had been repainted 2 weeks earlier. Not for the boy, but for the community. The principal, a woman named Fatu with chalk still on her fingers, greeted them with a smile that carried more meaning than applause ever could. As the boy entered, children turned to look. Some whispered. One clapped. He sat in the front row, back straight, hands folded over his books. And for the first time in his life, his name was called from a roster, not as a burden, not as a warning, but as a student. Meanwhile, across the country, the ripples began to spread. The My Name, My Future initiative launched quietly in 5 districts. The rules were simple. Identify children sharing surnames with known public figures, civil servants, teachers, and local heroes. Pair them with mentors, not to elevate them, but to remind those in power of who they once were. Education support, health access, and dignity-first engagement. No press releases. Just action. A former general met a girl named Amadou and discovered she was his sister's granddaughter. A retired professor found a boy named Cone reading under a bridge, a mirror of his younger self. A midwife reunited with a child born in her care, now sweeping floors where she once delivered life. The country didn't change overnight. But in government offices, whispers grew. I have a namesake in Bobo, I'm visiting next week. There's a girl with my name drawing in the sand. I'm bringing her notebooks. Maybe we should all look a little closer. And that was the point. Not revolution. Recognition. Not policy. Proximity. 1 week later, Ibrahim Traoré returned to visit the boy again. They walked together through a quiet garden behind the new health center, where young patients painted on recycled wood. One painted stars. Another painted a house with no roof. The boy painted a chalkboard with stick figures standing tall. What's that? Ibrahim asked. It's my future class, the boy said, smiling. I'm the teacher. Ibrahim nodded, emotion tightening his chest. You're not just dreaming anymore. I still sweep, the boy said. But now, I think about equations. They both laughed. As they walked back toward the street, the boy paused and tugged on the president's sleeve. Why me? He asked softly. Ibrahim knelt. Because you reminded me what my name was supposed to mean. The boy looked away, suddenly shy. And what is it supposed to mean? He placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. It's supposed to mean future. And with that, they walked on, not as strangers, not as symbols, but as two stories learning to grow from the same root. The schoolyard was alive with soft chaos. Children played beneath the baobab tree, their laughter rising like smoke. Parents leaned against faded walls, watching. Teachers arranged books on plastic chairs. A goat tied to a post chewed lazily on a cardboard sign that once read Community Literacy Day. But in the center of the courtyard stood a handmade stage. No flags. No microphones. Just a raised wooden platform built by local carpenters and swept clean by eager hands. Ibrahim Traoré sat near the back, wearing a shirt woven from Faso dan Fani, the traditional cotton cloth of the land. No podium separated him from the people. No guards flanked his seat. Beside him sat Fatimata, her scarf freshly tied, her hands clasped like she was holding something too precious to drop. The boy stood off stage, fingers clutching a small piece of paper. It shook in his hands, not from fear, but from something deeper, the feeling of being seen. Marie leaned down beside him and whispered, "You're not just speaking. You're reminding." He nodded slowly. Then Ibrahim rose, walked quietly to the center of the platform, and turned to the crowd. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't ask for silence. He just looked at them the way a grandfather looks at family, with a patience that asks nothing but presence. "We gathered here today," he began softly, "not to celebrate one boy, but to remember how easily a boy can be forgotten." A hush fell. The kind that swells when something sacred is about to pass through. He turned toward the boy. "Would you join me, Ibrahim?" The child walked forward slowly. The crowd watched, not out of spectacle, but with breath held like a prayer. When he reached the president, the man stepped aside. "This space belongs to you," Ibrahim said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Say what your name means." The boy unfolded the paper, then looked out across the people. His voice was soft, but it didn't tremble. "My name is Ibrahim," he said. "I used to sweep dust." A pause. "Now I read books." He looked at his grandmother. Then at the man beside him. "Someone once told me that our names carry more than sound. They carry stories." Mine carried silence, until someone stopped to hear it. The wind shifted gently. A bird cried from the tree. The boy folded his note and added, "I want to become a teacher, so that no child ever feels invisible again." The applause wasn't thunderous. It was steady. Deep. Rooted. The kind of sound that doesn't rise, it sinks in and stays. Later that evening, in a quiet room of the presidential residence, Ibrahim Traoré placed two items side by side on his shelf. One was a worn photograph of his late nephew, the man who shared his name and died before the nation knew him. The other was a letter. Handwritten, uneven. The boy had given it to him after the speech. "Dear Grandpa. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for giving me your name back. I will use it well. Your student, Ibrahim." The man stared at the words for a long time. Then he reached for a frame, not glass, not gold. Just wood, plain and unpolished. He placed the photo and the letter inside and set it next to the nation's founding documents. Because this too, he knew, was a kind of constitution. Weeks passed. Then months. The "My Name, My Future" initiative expanded, not by decree, but by desire. Across Burkina Faso, mentors returned to forgotten neighborhoods. Grandparents stepped forward to raise children whose names echoed theirs. Civil servants visited rural schools to see if a name on the register matched their own. And when it did, they sat. They listened. They asked. In one village, a baker built a scholarship fund for 4 children who shared his surname. In another, a nurse discovered the child she delivered 20 years ago now lived on the same street. The change wasn't flashy. It was fertile. At a teachers' conference in the capital, Marie stood before an auditorium and unveiled a mural drawn by students. It showed stick figures passing torches, not to athletes, but to children with open palms. Below the mural were 3 words, painted in chalky gold. "We were not forgotten." The room rose in silence. And Ibrahim the boy? He kept going to school. He read under mango trees. He helped other students with spelling. He brought extra porridge to a boy who didn't speak. When the principal asked him to write his name on the classroom board, he did, then underlined it with chalk and whispered, "That's for all the other Ibrahims." His grades weren't perfect. But his presence was. And that, Ibrahim Traoré believed, was enough. One late afternoon, as the harmattan winds whispered across the city, President Traoré stood by the same tree where he had first met the boy. The branches had grown. The roots had deepened. He looked out across the land and smiled. Not because it was saved. But because, finally, someone had stopped to look.